Alrighty, everyone. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hey.
So I'm here with Emi,
Yes.
and I'm here with Joe, and we're sitting in Joe's boxing here in Five Dock. And how this podcast came about for me was one of my previous guests, Andrew McCulloch. He's the CEO of Ray White New South Wales. He messaged me and said, "Oh, Johnny, I've got somebody that I want you to do a podcast with." And I said, "Oh, okay. Who's that?" And then he said, "Oh, he's this young kid who's come across from Argentina."
Yes.
Yep. And he's trying to make the Australian boxing team.
That's true.
Yep.
Yes, that's correct.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, that sounds interesting." He goes, and then Andrew also said to me, he's like, "Oh, he's left half his family behind."
Yeah.
And so then he hooked me up with Mahan. And then Mahan's obviously said, "Johnny, can you come to Joe's Boxing and we'll do the podcast there?" And so that's what's brought me here today. And so thank you for coming on. And Joe, thank you for being here as well. It's really lovely to have you here.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always like, when I walk into a gym, and I was saying this to Joe when I came in, that you can almost feel the energy that's been in the room. Like sometimes when you walk into a gym, if everything's new, it's like people haven't invested the blood, sweat and tears into it as yet. But when you walk into a place that's, it's almost like there's a bit of nostalgia in here. Joe, do you mind, sharing a couple of stories about some of the people that might have come through here?
Well, we've had reasonable success in competition. We've had a couple of state champions, and our best homegrown student reached the Commonwealth Games trials in 2017. I guess we have enjoyed, camaraderie. I think there's been more than 5,000 people that have passed through my doors as students.
Wow.
In 25 years that I've been here. So there's been lots of history, and it's hard to pick ones that are really special and stuff like that above everybody else.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. All right. So, Emi, do you mind telling us a little bit about, what life was like for you growing up? So, one of the things that I always like to ask my guests, and I'm going to ask you the same after, Joe, is, what would be your earliest memory? So, you obviously grew up in Argentina, correct?
Yeah, I grew up in Argentina.
Yep.
And I started my boxing competition in 2012.
In 2012.
2012. Before that, I was doing martial arts.
Okay. What kind of martial arts?
Kung Fu.
Okay. What style of Kung Fu?
It's traditional Kung Fu, so it's from the Buddhist temple.
Yep.
So we was doing is something similar. We was competing in kickboxing.
Okay. So Sanda.
Sanda.
Yep. Okay.
So it's when we say our boxing is not good, we should start in the boxing club to improve so then slowly we keep competing in boxing.
Okay.
So yeah, it was.
Okay. So so I'm guessing it was a Shaolin style of Kung Fu, right?
Shaolin style.
Yep. Yeah. So I also did Shaolin Kung Fu as well for many years. So is there much of a following for that in Argentina?
We having a few match.
Yep.
Every second month usually. And yes, we having big tournaments too in different countries in South America.
Yep.
So we every month preparing for that competition.
Okay.
So yeah, we training boxing, kicks, working in the floor,
Yep.
different areas. So it's how we keep going after in boxing.
Yep.
So yeah.
Okay. And then what about so what was the city that you grew up in?
In Mendoza.
Mendoza.
Mendoza is the city. It's in the south.
In the where? Sorry.
It's like 15 hours driving from capital.
From the capital. Okay.
Exactly. So it's a small city, town, but good.
Yep.
There, yeah. My dad having a gym there, was having a gym, so I start with martial arts.
Oh, okay. So your dad was teaching over there as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So from a young age you were probably exposed to martial arts then?
6, 7.
6, 7.
Yeah,
did you always have the passion for it, or was it?
Yeah, a couple of years when I was teenager, I don't want to train anymore because all my friends was doing different sport like gymnastics, swimming.
Yep.
But yeah, my dad keep pushing me to practice a few days a week. And around 15 years old, I started with like instructor in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So also I was coaching it's made me more motivation to keep going.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
it was good. It was very fun, and we make a big group.
Yep.
So it was very nice.
Yeah, it's funny. So I've got 3 kids. My son is 3, and sometimes I bring him to one of the gyms that I go to, and they all love him there because he just, he keeps himself entertained. He goes and finds people's random gloves and puts the gloves on, and he's, wanting to punch things and do all that. But I always feel like, it's the best way to introduce him into martial arts, right? Like if he's in the environment, he's going to absorb it, and hopefully that means that he's going to want to do it, right?
Yeah, it's a good discipline. It's a good discipline.
So what about from, like, in terms of outside of martial arts, like what was life like for you in Mendoza? Like what kind of, how would you describe growing up in that town as being?
In the town, oh, that's good. Just make the school, the training every time, and having a few friends. And it was good. We was having seminar every year.
Mm-hmm.
So every year we travel to different countries.
Mm-hmm.
It's called, we come to Sydney in 2017 for first time.
Yep.
Just for 20 days.
Yep.
For seminar, and we say, oh, we should come back to here.
Okay.
So, and then we come in 2019.
Yep.
We close the gym there. We just come here to stay here.
Wow.
Live here
Okay.
and compete for Australia.
All right.
So,
We'll get a bit more into that, but I want to give Joe a chance to sort of explain a little bit about your martial arts journey as well, and what life was like growing up for you, Joe.
I'm a Kiwi, so the great year of 1958 I was born. I guess, when I came alive, the Bruce Lee era was in full swing, and boxing was pretty much dead. Early 70s. There were a few boxing clubs around, but mainly of Polynesian descent.
Yep.
And so I was attracted to martial arts. I went to a boarding school in Auckland, and one of the teachers gave a demonstration on. They called it Chinese temple boxing at the time.
Okay.
So I guess Shaolin.
Yep.
But that didn't really affect. For some reason, I had karate in my head, and it wasn't until the 3rd year of university in Dunedin that I, went, I've got to do this. And I went to the local YMCA. Yep. And started in Kukushinkai karate.
Okay.
Now I did that for a year, and then the club split in half, and one half went with Seido Juku under a guy named Tadashi Nakamura that is actually headquartered in New York. And I just loved it, and probably spent the next, 4 years, getting my black belt, pretty much all I wanted to do. Then I ended up moving to Australia. I even opened my own little school in Melbourne. There was none of my karate around. Moved to Sydney, and then 1988, after doing some kickboxing in Bankstown and with the great Alex Tui, I ended up going to New York and living there for a while. Competing a little bit on the American karate circuit. Mm-hmm. 1989 came back. I sort of went back and forth for a bit, and then we started a karate school. We were in Chippendale for about 4 or 5 years. I taught kids karate in Everleigh Street. And then I was lucky enough to buy this studio in 1997. Mm-hmm. So we've been here 25 years now.
Yep.
Sometime I always had a kickboxing program running, and then year 2000, sort of by accident, ended up turning it into a boxing program.
Yep.
Mainly through Yellow Pages. And then by 2007, 2008, I left martial arts, and it became a full-time boxing place. I've sort of have a co-coach named Justin Crawford, who's a 2-time Olympian, 9 times Australian champion, mm-hmm. and we've kind of worked in worked the corners for the last 14 years
Yep.
now.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at now, and that's part of my journey.
Yeah, wow. There's a lot to unpack there. So starting in Kyokushin karate, so Kyokushin is one of those styles of karate that a lot of people would say is quite a hard style. You know, like I think if people were to Google like, you know, the 100 men kumites and all that sort of stuff, a lot of those guys are Kyokushin guys, right? And so my recollection of the history of Kyokushin is it should be an Okinawan style of karate, and I think you guys. Oh yeah, Emi just. Yeah, all good. And one of the as an Okinawan style of karate, one of the forms that you should that most black belts would learn would be the Sanshin form. Did you have the Sanshin form in your style of karate?
No, I only spent 1 year in Kyokushinkai, and then we went to Seido Juku, who had a lot of its own
forms
thing.
Okay.
Kanku, and Korigo Shiho, so Nidan Kata, Senshin, not Sanshin, Senshin, and others like that were probably the common ones.
Yep.
But yeah, not. Oh, sorry. It was probably that kata that you're talking about.
Yep. Just the Japanese pronunciation of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny. So the style of kung fu that I did was called Wuzu Chen, which in Chinese means five ancestors fist. And so in China, there's two Shaolin temples. There's one in the north and one in the south. Yeah. And so that's why they have a northern and a southern style. And so I trained a southern style. And so that form, Sanshin or Sandan, whatever you want to call it, is the first form that we learn in that style of kung fu. And when it sort of propagated, you know, whether it was via fishermen or boats or whatever, over to Japan, they still retain that form, but rather than teaching it as one of the first forms, they teach it as one of the last forms. And it's interesting because the movements are actually very similar. So the literal translation of that form's name it means three battles. So the point is that you have these three set movements that you do going forwards, and then you also do them in retreat as well. So advancing and retreat. And so, you know, like if you can look up the form, because when you look online, you'll see all these different ways that it's played in terms of, and that just comes down.
Is that the breathing kata as well?
Yeah,
that is taught.
Yep.
That is taught fairly early.
And do this sort of stuff.
Yeah, that is taught fairly early.
Oh, it is taught fairly early.
Yeah,
okay, yeah. So so different instructors might teach it earlier or whatever, but so that was how, like, I guess a lot of the martial arts actually link up. So I just thought it was an interesting link. You know, when you brought up the karate side, and Emi was starting in Shaolin Kung Fu as well. Yeah. You know. Do you find that, and this is, I guess if you want to answer first and then the other one can take a chance to answer, do you find that having a base in a traditional style assists your boxing as well?
Yes. For me, yes.
Yep. So
I think martial arts is very good at breaking movements down to small pieces.
Yep.
And I guess both Japanese and China, they have names for this, names for that.
Yep. Yep.
So when it's to describe something, there is a name for it. So it can break down movements very well.
Yep.
And I think having the experience in that is good for both doing and teaching.
Yep.
Yeah. Whereas, a lot of boxing is kind of do it this way sort of thing,
yeah,
rather than thinking of fine movements.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. It is interesting, right? Because I suppose, coming from a Sanda background, the movement style is very different, right?
It's different, but like Joe said, we're very focused in break down every movement.
Yep.
So we focus in the technique every time. So it's helped us a lot for the boxing.
Yep.
But yes.
Did you find it hard to transition because you're so used to using your legs?
Yes, distance, very different. When I start boxing, I was having the different distance from the kids.
Yep.
So was very hard. A few months training and make very, very hard to change a little bit different distance and
Yep.
yeah, but was fun, was good.
Yep. Okay. Let me ask you a bit more about. So you were doing these seminars all over the world, right? And then attending seminars all over the world, and then you came to a seminar in Australia in 2017.
Yeah.
And then, how did that spark the idea to basically say we want to come back to Australia?
Because we was competing in Argentina,
Mm-hmm.
but we find here we can have more support in sport than in Argentina.
Okay. And
In Argentina, you can compete. There are a lot of good competition in boxing
yep.
and different sport, but there are no support for the people that are doing sport.
Mm.
So we say, okay, maybe here we can find this support that we need.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if we live in here, we can find a better to make a good career competition. So
Okay.
that's why we thinking come to here.
Yep. And so then, how did was that your dad's idea or your idea?
In this moment, my dad's idea. Me, no, just I was competing
Yeah.
and I was having my friend, my family there. So I was not thinking to come
Yep.
for leave.
Yep.
Just I was thinking, if I come just 1-2 months and then come back.
Yep.
But then when I come, my dad said, no, we want to live here. I say, oof, was very hard for me. It was very hard.
Were you homesick at all? Did you get homesick? You know, miss Argentina?
Homesick. I was having my girlfriend there, my family, so it was a little bit hard for me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
How did your mum and you've got a sister as well?
I have a twin sister, younger sister,
Wow.
and my mom. Yeah, she same feelings. She miss a lot, and also I was telling her I will go this year to visit, and then the lockdown, COVID start. So 3 years still here. It's good. It's okay.
Yeah.
Now feeling better, but when I come here, I don't speak nothing of English.
Yep.
So when I come here for first time, we just doing signs,
Yep.
and then slowly here with the kids.
Yep.
I was teaching Joe with the groups, the kids.
Yep.
The kids teaching me English, so was good. So it was very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for Joe, you know, what was your first sort of recollection of meeting Emi? Like, what was that like for you? So he wouldn't have be able to communicate much with you either, right?
Well, I had done a couple of papers of Spanish at uni. I don't know whether it helps, but it did sort of help with a little bit of communication. Again, they were a little bit of a surprise to turn up, you know, and say what they were trying to do. Or initially they were just sort of, you know, interested in the boxing. I didn't know that much, but and then as Emi said, you know, like they really didn't have much support, and they were sort of struggling with places to stay, etc., etc. So our school rallied a bit, and then, you know, things sort of slowly started changing, and then we managed to get them into some competition, which both Emi and his stepmum Macca at the time won, and then they sort of started to, you know, people started to take notice of them. But you know, it's been a hard slog for them. It's been you know, a lot of change and hardship, and they really are very, very resilient. Very resilient.
Yeah, you have to have a real drive to be willing to leave, you know, so much of your life behind to chase a dream, right? And I think, you know, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily have the courage to do that. So, and I think, you know, and especially at a young age, right? Like it's one of those ones where, you know, I think you're fortunate to have guidance, you know, in terms of your dad, and he's got this plan, and but you need to have your own intrinsic motivation inside,
Exactly.
you know, your own heart to want to chase that as well.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So you're now what, 30? How many fights you had? What's your record now?
32 fights.
32 fights. Yep.
Yeah, I have a few exhibitions, but around 32 fights.
Yep.
Have wins the fights. Here in Australia, I make maybe for lockdown a few tournaments. Now come back to the competition.
Yep.
But I make more fights in Argentina.
More fights in
Make
Argentina.
like 22 fights in Argentina.
Wow. So were you boxing in Argentina as well, or was it just for the kickboxing?
I started in 2012 just with only boxing. I was having a coach there, ex-Olympic champion and ex-world champion. I was training very hard in his gym, so I learned so much from him. And yeah.
And then from a, I guess, from a training perspective, is it, are their coaching styles very different? Like, is there,
coaching
between Argentina and Australia?
First thing, because the English.
Yep.
So in this moment I don't speak English, so I don't understand nothing when to me. So I was having my dad in the corner in Spanish talking me.
Yep.
To me. So this one was okay, was good. But now that I understand the coaching in the corner with the boxer, a little bit similar, a few difference. But yeah, usually they want to push the boxer to make the best. So usually it's the focus.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. And Joe, out of curiosity, what was it that made you want to come to Australia? So you had this life in New Zealand.
I just Kiwi boy, want to jump the ditch and get better opportunities. It's a different world back in the 80s. It was an easier transition to make.
Yep.
I was working in IT, and there weren't that many opportunities where I was. I liked the idea, and yeah, I guess my Australia was supposed to be just a stepping stone to probably the UK or the US.
Okay.
But and although I did travel, it ended up being the place that fell in love with Sydney and made it my home.
Yep.
Really.
So, out of curiosity, what was so you mentioned you competed obviously in karate as well, right? So what was the competition circuit like back then?
I don't know. There was people like Billy Blanks on it, who started Taibo.
Yep.
And a guy named Nasty Anderson, who was a big heavyweight. They were sort of solid points competitions, and I found that they're very kind of similar to like I guess amateur boxing in some ways, that you're looking to score. It was just my adventure. I did a tournament in Jamaica,
Wow.
Which was wild. It was like watching a cricket match in Jamaica.
Yep.
And then I did one in South Africa. And the one in South Africa was interesting because I ended up going for a walk by myself and was attacked by 5 guys, one who had a gun.
Oh no.
And so my martial arts training all came down to 5 seconds. So
you got to tell us the story. So what happened?
I walked into the city, and there were, before apartheid fell, the Africans were not allowed into the city, but once it fell, they all think. And the city was interesting because it was kind of like a New York street scene with Sydney architecture.
Yep.
And the rest of the crew were doing a self-defense seminar within barbed wire fences, and I decided can't stand it, so I went for this walk, and it worked. For a while it worked out well. I was wandering the city, but then I kind of got outside the security cameras. Now this is 2006, I think, and I was walking down a street, and 3 guys came in front of a dump truck, and a couple come. So one guy came around my neck, and this guy in front.
Just bring the mic up, sorry.
This guy pointed a gun at me.
Yep.
So I leaned back and kicked at the gun and flipped the guy off my back so I'd be in front of it. I asked them if they'd like to have sex and go travelling, and they paused for a moment and then just disappeared. So it was one of those. I had no jewellery, I had no money.
Yep.
It was just all down to that 5 seconds.
Wow.
So it was a moment, and that's sort of solidified everything I believed about self-defence as far as your mind goes and reacting, and also the thing of it's called AMP, accelerated mental process. So your life flashing before your eyes. So you feel incredibly weak and slow, but in fact you're
moving at a normal pace or a faster pace.
Yeah. So it's just that flight or flight mechanism.
Yep.
So I walked to the hotel, was on a high for a couple of days, flew back to Australia, saw my daughters and realised kind of, how
bad it could have gone.
Yeah. So, but, that was a great moment. In some ways, at least it worked out.
Yep.
But I don't know whether the gun was real loaded.
Or not. Yep.
Didn't stop to have a conversation about
of course not.
That was what I did. New York during the 80s was very edgy. A lot of homeless, a lot of people on the street, but a really kind of amazing atmosphere as well. But it was the height of the murder. It was the murder capital at the time. 2,000 murders, I think, in the New York tri-borough per year, and it peaked. So it was edgy. I think I learnt kind of more, on the streets than I did in the dojos, really.
Yep.
So, it taught me a lot.
So did you get into a little bit of trouble on the streets of New York?
Not really, but you would be confronted, and just there was a lot of people that were poor and struggling and desperate and stuff like that. So you had to keep your wits about you.
Yeah.
I was living in a Puerto Rican neighbourhood in a place called Park Slope in Brooklyn, and when I came home from the subway at night, there'd be eyes out, in the doorways and stuff like that. So, it really was an edgy place, but very exciting. It was a good times.
And how about for you, Emi? You've mentioned you've done a bit of travel. Is there a place that stands out other than Australia, obviously, because you've chosen to stay in Australia? But have there been some places that you were like, wow, this is really different and really cool? Or
look, we in Argentina traveled many times. Chile,
yeah,
my country. But when we come to Australia, we say, we need to come back to Australia. So another places, not really.
Yep.
Stay in other places. But just a few countries, not many.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just hearing Joe's story about South Africa and then America. When my wife and I went to America, and we went to San Francisco, right? And this is only a few years back, but it was really interesting because it's sort of, I think nowadays you could say, America has a very similar feel to Australia. Like, it's relatively safe and all that sort of stuff. And we were catching the bus to go eat at some cafe that she wanted to try. And one of her friends had said, hey, don't get off at this street, because this street is like where all the drug dealers are. And, lo and behold, my wife and I, we get off on this street. And it was really interesting because, I've never been asked that many times if I wanted to buy rocks in my life. Like, so there's guys on every corner asking you, do you want to buy rocks? And I'm guessing they're rocks of whether it's crack cocaine or heroin or whatever it is. But it was just weird. It was just that one street. And you pass that street and then it's like you're back to normal civilization. I'm guessing, your experience in South Africa was like that, because you're in a gated, sort of...
Well, No, not really. At the time, it was quite confronting. I stayed with a friend there, and they had an iron gate between downstairs and upstairs at night. You weren't advised to do anything besides be in the bus and go to a machine gun guarded shopping centre somewhere. So it was certainly a time, and I don't know that Johannesburg has improved that much anyway. But I was just, probably dumb and stupid to do it. I had been, people had said that the centre is a bit safer because it's got, had video footage, which was fairly new at the time.
Yep.
That was a very edgy place. New York wasn't bad actually, even though it had you could get into trouble, but it was still. I loved the freedom and I remember I was sitting in a cafe on 47th and Broadway, and a group of cops were running around trying to find a homeless person's table, and they really put a lot of care into it. They were very kind to that person, and the person was obviously kind of mentally ill as well. So it was, it had. I think cleaning it up was great because it's a lot safer and everything else happened, but it also probably lost some of its sort of freedom.
Absolutely.
Well. But it was, it was an experience, and like Emi coming to Australia, this is his time of life, and the memories that will flow from this will last forever.
Yeah. So I guess when you sort of think back on what life was like in Mendoza versus what life is like here, what would you say are the biggest differences, or is it very similar?
No, it's different. It's different. Yeah, the people there is different, and here we feel like big city comparing with Mendoza. So yeah, it's different. People there is friendly here too, but you can get in trouble too if you go to the street and you need to take care. When we come here, we find more safety here.
Yep.
So that's good.
Yep. Okay. And then so when it, like, in terms of your experience here, so you originally came on like a tourist visa.
I come tourist, yes.
Yep. And then you had to apply for like a.
Then a student I did English course.
Yep.
And then sport. We come here with the idea of applying a sport visa. So we was doing our training here, our competition. We started the first fights in boxing, and then we meet here for first time. We get special sparring from one boxer. The name is Brock Jarvis. He is Australian champion. From Jeff Phoenix is the coach.
Yep.
Living here in Fight Dogs, so he come to Joe's to do all the preparation.
Yep.
So Joe organize a sparring with him. We start doing sparring every week, I think. We was doing sparring for 1 year. Was doing every week, every second week sometimes. So it's when we find good boxing for us, good level.
Yep.
So yes, then we looking what we need for our visa. We see that we was needing one sponsor for sport visa.
Yep.
So we have the Jeff is ex-world champion.
Yep.
And everyone know here in Australia.
Yep.
We have the possibility with Jeff to say he say I can help you guys. Also, Joe helped us to talk with Jeff and to organize this, and he offered to to sign in for like a
To
sponsor.
sponsor you guys.
So it's how we apply for a sport visa.
Okay. Yeah, it's a
And
yeah. Like I think to get that sort of high level sparring in as well is what makes people sharp,
tough.
right?
Tough sparring with Brock. Hard sparring with Brock.
Do you have any comment on that, Joe?
Look, it was just amazing to see the progress over a number of weeks or months. For a start, I guess Brock was monstering Emi, but then it started to change, and Emi started to come back quite competitively, and it was good for them both. And it was interesting that Jeff, because Brock had a very hard fight against an Argentinian, wasn't it? Remember that after the preparation,
Yeah.
and it went, I think, 9 rounds, and afterwards Jeff actually acknowledged the standard of sparring that helped him Brock achieve that win.
Yep.
So Emi kind of got that. Then I guess Brock grew a bit, really. So he had to fight up a bit. So it probably wasn't as beneficial for Emi to be there.
Yep.
But for that amount of time, it worked really well, didn't it?
Yeah, it was very good. Also for me, I feel like I was having a good progress. So helped me also for my career, for my competition to keep training hard and keep focus in boxing. So
Yeah, I think that really builds your level. Having good sparring partners.
Yeah, having very good sparring with him, and we did for 1 year sparring. I was doing one training camp with Brock for his fight with the Philippine boy. So we did good sparring there, and yeah, it was for me was a lot of sparring for me and a lot of practice. It was very good.
Yeah, I think like another great example of that would be like George Kambosos Jr. Right, like he got to spar with Manny Pacquiao, how many rounds, and that's probably helped him to propel him to where he is now today. So.
Come on.
Yeah, all good. No, so yeah, but I think it's one of those things, right? Like when you have really good training partners, they just elevate your level.
It's a good challenge for me because he's tall, he's strong. He was in the top level in the professional career. So to be professional, you need to be focused 100% in your career. Me in amateur was big experience, and I really learned so much from him and Jeff. Jeff also was in his corner, but was a lot of tough, a lot of big challenges for me to keep every week doing sparring with Brock.
Yeah, and like you see that he makes adjustments, so that forces you to make adjustments, and then when you make those adjustments, it gets competitive again, and then until the next person finds that new adjustment, right?
Yeah, it's every week, very competitive. So that's the good thing of the competition. You need to every week make the best and make changes and try to make your best.
Yep.
So yeah.
So then, what does how do you structure your training now? So are you boxing every day, or you have a rest day? Like what's your sort of training schedule look like?
For boxing, I should train 6 days a week, 1 day off.
Yep.
Sometimes 1, sometimes 2, or sometimes 3 times per day, depending how far from the competition I am.
Yep.
But yeah, usually just 1 day off, train in the morning, train in the afternoon, and one thing that keep me very focused is I working like a coach also. So my work now is improve in my amateur career and also be a good coach. So that's good because I really enjoyed be a coach and train different students. It's very good. Yeah.
And having to when you're coaching people, obviously the level is going to be very different, right? Like, so sometimes you're teaching beginners, sometimes you might be teaching some ability.
Exactly.
Did you find that helps to reinforce a lot of the principles or concepts, boxing concepts that you've learned?
To back to when I have beginners, I need to back to the beginning, teach the basics. When you have someone with more level, someone that wants to compete, you need to focus more in the competition. So, yeah, me too. I'm teaching. I learn a lot because it's practice and practice every time. So it's very good.
And how do you find it? You know, how's that helped your English? You know, having to teach.
In the beginning, when I started with coaching, just signs.
Yep.
That's only what I can do. Then slowly, showing just the exercise.
Yep.
Repeat every round. Then my English slowly getting better and better. But yeah, in the beginning was very hard. Was very funny because I was having a few clients from the beginning.
Yep.
And now after a few years, we can talk English
Yep.
very fluently. We can enjoy it.
Yep.
It's very funny. It's very funny, yeah.
Yeah, what we're talking about, Joe, was just talking about, you know, when you teach. So obviously, Emi's doing a bit of coaching now to help you as well. You know, you have to. It helps to reinforce a lot of the basic principles and concepts. You know, and you have to sort of cut it back down to a level that the person that you're training can understand, right?
Yes.
So, and then what about from a strength and conditioning perspective? Like, what are you doing for strength and conditioning?
Everything body weight.
Body weight?
Like
Calisthenics.
Like calisthenics, a little bit gymnastic or stretching, but not much weight from the gym.
Yep.
Because for boxing is
It's slow.
Make you slow, so it's more body weight.
Yep.
And sprinting, of course, every time sprinting.
Yep.
Sparring 1 or 2 times per week.
Yep.
And the pads work every time. Pads work, or work in different rounds with the boxing bag.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Okay.
that's the training.
Yeah, it's always interesting. You know, everybody has a different approach to strength and conditioning. I know, you know, for a lot of mixed martial arts guys, they're very big on the strength and conditioning. Like, whereas, you know, there are other coaches who are like, no, you should be focusing primarily on what the work that you're doing. So if you're going to compete in boxing, it should be boxing. If it's jiu-jitsu, you do focus on jiu-jitsu, and the strength and conditioning is just like a support, like a supplementary style thing. You know, there's. Do you have a perspective on that, Joe? What do you think is, you know?
I think there's a balance.
Yep.
You need to be fit to do it. I mean, Emi does an enormous amount of you know, work on his strength and conditioning, but as well as his boxing. So yeah, I think he's got the right balance of what to do. I think teamwork and stuff like that with you know, strength and conditioning is probably the best, isn't it? So that everybody's doing it together.
Yep. Yeah, that makes it a lot easier. It's always the worst if you're trying to do that sort of stuff by yourself, and it's just like, especially if it's like, you know, I don't know about you, but, you know, when I do road work, it's like, you know, I can do it, but it's not enjoyable.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we find something that is very good for our career is the sparring partner. Help a lot to improve. For example, we making a good sparring now. We was doing a sparring with Tim Maloney. It's 2 world champions. They living in Queensland, but we're doing a training camp with him last month. And well, here in Sydney, we find a good sparring partner. It's helped you a lot to stay focused in boxing.
Yeah, and I think it also helps you to understand, you know, what are some of your gaps and shortfalls, right? So, you know, there's only so much and I guess, you know, I'm curious on your thoughts on this, Joe, but like a lot of, you know, I think pad work is more for show, so to speak. You know, a lot of people like to take videos of doing pad work and things like that because you can chain up, you know, really nice combos and make it look pretty, but, you know, sometimes fighting isn't pretty. Like, do you have a perspective on that?
Look, you know, sparring is the thing that does it in boxing, and you know, there's just you know, there's a constant travel around Sydney if you look at Tim Zhu, he's you know, sparring Robert Whittaker.
Yep.
They're going across to Sutherland PCYCs. They're you know, very, very active, as is Emi, going around and getting lots of different sparring people. So yeah, it's very prevalent, I guess, in boxing. I'm sure it is in other Muay Thai, etc. But you know, a lot of work to get to the places and do it. So Emi does a lot.
It's not easy to coordinate either. Like I find, you know, I think in mixed martial arts and Muay Thai, it probably happens a little bit less than in boxing. I think in boxing, like everybody sort of like tries to rally around each other. I don't know. Maybe it's just a difference in the communities, right? But you know, I think, you know, from what I've experienced anyway, with like say mixed martial arts fighters, there's certain places, yeah, you can go and get work in, and then there's other places where it's like, oh no, we're not, you know, open. We're just only looking after our members, kind of a thing. So, have you found, you know, most people in boxing to be quite open? I'm guessing you're fairly open in terms of how you approach it, Joe.
Look, we're the ones that tend to travel. You know, I'm probably not the biggest fighting gym, and therefore it is a bit protective as far as your people go. You just need someone exceptional like Emi can you know, find lots of places to get to. So you know, I think what, you know, you just don't like random people turning up.
Of course.
You want it properly organised and a coach to be there and all that sort of stuff, so it's safe.
Yeah.
That's what I think about it.
Yeah.
You know, Emi's got a name now, so people are actually asking him to come.
Yep.
Whether it be Sam Goodman or you know, others. He even did some rounds with Tim Zhu.
Yep.
Also next week we're doing with ex-Olympic boxer Garside.
Yep.
Garside, we're doing sparring with him. We did sparring with Maloney's brothers in Queensland. We learned so much from him. So yes, it's very good, because that's the good of boxing, is you need to have the gym open to find different sparring and find different styles, so that's the good.
Yeah, it's exchanging ideas, exchanging pointers. You know, I think that was that's the traditional term for it would be exchanging pointers. You know, when that's what we used to call sparring. At least, you know, I think years ago it was about exchanging pointers. But I think, you know, for a lot of more traditional styles, they sort of closed off on that a bit, and you know, it became less prevalent that people would want to exchange pointers. And I think that just shows why, you know, other certain styles have developed really and flourished, right? Because if you have that constant challenge of exchanging pointers and exchanging ideas, you can actually refine your understanding of what is the best way to attack or problem solve this particular problem. Yeah, it's like, I think, you know, and I guess to sort of, you know, firm up what my point was that, you know, once you have friends that you know, or you've established friendships with these people, like they introduce you to other people, and then they go, oh, you know, you're a great sparring partner, you know, come along to here and spar here as well. Like I think that definitely happens in you know, Muay Thai and mixed martial arts as well. It's just harder to, unless you already know somebody there, to establish those sort of relationships. But you know, I think, you know, it's really good that you're getting in that kind of a work. So I guess from like from a COVID perspective, right? I'm just sort of curious about how the last couple of years, you know, have impacted your training. And
that's very hard. We did all the training in the park.
Oh wow!
During the lockdown, we're having all the restrictions, so we were doing pads, calisthenics, everything in the park.
Yep.
And no sparring for a few months. So when we back to sparring, we find very hard the feelings again. We try to keep practicing every week, but yeah, it was it's good to be back after the lockdown. So, yeah,
it's when you it's like anything, when you haven't done it for a while, you get those anxiety. You know, you sort of just like, oh, have I still got it?
Yeah, yeah.
And then what about for you, Joe? Like, obviously, you know, as a gym owner, it hasn't. I'm sure it wouldn't have been easy. Like, what was sort of your experience throughout this whole lockdown? A couple of years.
It certainly lost a lot of momentum, and it's I guess you know, the through the lockdown it wasn't so bad, even though it seemed bad. But coming out of it now it has been a bit tricky. But it is slowly returning to normal. One thing I'd like to go back and say is Emi and his dad didn't really have, you know, any government support during the lockdown. So a lot of our students took the opportunity to train with them and allowed them to
make it survive.
So it was good.
The only training was during the lockdown, and by the way, was training in the park. And yeah, we keep a lot of students from Joe's training during the lockdown in the park. So it was good for us because we keep making sessions, and it's like Joe said, without the confirmation of our visa, we don't have the government support. So it was good support for us. Stay with the students in the park, and Joe every time sending someone to train. So it was good. It was very good.
Well, that's really good of you, Joe. I think, you know, to have like, you know, the community also rally behind you is also a testament to, you know, what kind of people you are as well. You know, if you're not good people, then why would people want to support you, right? Like,
that's true. Students keep training every week. They want to keep training, keeping fit. So it was nice. That's good.
Have you found, you know, as you're starting to get a bit more of a name for yourself, you know, people want to sort of you know, test themselves against you and try and, you know, give you a harder time as a result of it?
During the training?
Yeah, during training or sparring or whatever.
A little bit sometimes, but it's okay. Like, after we do the sparring, we see what is the level, in the fitness level, different things. They find out, okay, I need to improve, I want to improve. See you tomorrow. So they want to keep training every time.
I think Emi's at a level now that he's really just testing himself against the best Australia has to offer.
Yep.
You know, the Maloneys, Sam Goodman, Bruno Tarimo, that are at his weight level too, which is very important. I think when he started out trying to find the sparring, he would end up fighting heavier people, and it was hard. But as his name has grown, the you know, because it's hard for Sam Goodman to find good sparring partners, you know, that are not going to be his next opponent, probably, you know.
Yeah.
So Emi is filling that gap quite well. They may not like it so much when he does become their opponent. But you know, everybody makes money then.
Yeah, well, that's right, and that's the thing, you know, like you're in a business as well, right? So you got to think about it from that perspective. There's always a balancing act to it, you know, because you want to get the best work in, but at the same time, hey, this could be a future competitor for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So from that side, who sort of helps you to look after your promotion and like, you know, trying to promote you and help to get your name out there and do all that sort of stuff?
So we here was moving around the gyms, find the good sparrings. We have the promoter of the Maloneys helping us to do the training camp with Maloneys. The name is Tony. Here in Sydney, we find the good sparrings, and Maham trying to help us a little bit with the promotion here in Sydney.
Yep.
But yes, the promoter of the boxer sometimes wants someone to make a good sparring with his boxer. So yeah, Tony from Queensland, he helped us to make the training camp possible.
Yep.
Malonis.
Yep.
So was very good for us because we can make the trips every week.
Mm.
Can do good sparrings 2 times per week, and then come back to here, come back to work, sessions, training, and then come back again to do more training. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, you know, if things, you know, still stay, you know, the way that they are, and we have minimal restrictions and all that sort of stuff, you know, you can obviously get a lot more work in the lead up, because if you got your eyes on the Olympics, when Paris is only 3 years away now, or 2 years away now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very close.
Yeah.
We getting the resident this month.
Yep.
And hopefully this year we competing in the national representing New South Wales.
Yep.
So if we have the opportunity of competing in the national for this year, would be very good for keep focus on the Olympic Games.
Yep.
So what we having the national next month, and just having training every day, getting the resident, and look to make a national this year.
Yep.
So we see.
Yep. All right. Cool. Well, you know, Joe, is there anything that you want to sort of share, or any sort of stories that you'd like to share before we wrap it up?
Look, I guess, you know, when people turn up on your doorstep and you're, you know, they have the dreams and stuff like that, you kind of are skeptical.
Yeah.
But you know, these guys have impossible dreams, and yet they've achieved quite a lot impossible already.
Yeah.
So I think it's very hard, you know, residency or citizenship wise for Emi to achieve the Olympics, but I'm not counting it out with the way they work. Whatever is going to happen, Emi's made a great name for himself already, and they are terrific people, and you know, I just hope I hope it all works out. It's really quite a story. Yep.
No, well, absolutely, and thank you for sharing. You know, both of you for sharing today. I think it's really great to be able to listen to your story and to know, you know, there are people out there, you know, sacrificing a lot of things, you know, for their dreams. And, you know, if that inspires anybody out there to go and chase something that they're, you know, passionate about, they should, you know, because until you try, you don't know. And, you know, there's a saying I really like, and it's a man has 2 lives, and he starts his second one when he realizes he's only got one. So, you know, keep chasing, and I look forward to seeing, you know, where this all goes for you. And for those interested in checking out Joe's boxing, so Joe's boxing is here in 5 Dock, so make sure you get in touch with Joe. You know, from
look for Joe's boxing and you'll find us.
Yep, so look for Joe's boxing and you'll find it. And, you know, in terms of health and fitness, like it's one of the best ways to keep your body healthy. Like at the end of the day, you know, if there's anything that we should have learnt over these last 2 years, is that the more healthy and resilient your body is going to be, that is your best chance to get through anything. And there's no better way than obviously doing that whilst also learning how to defend yourself from people trying to, you know, shoot you with guns in South Africa, etc. All right, thanks guys.
Thank you, Johnny.